welcome to the show. I'm your host, Adam Mueller, with the State Your Business podcast. And today I have Ben Footh, who I met on Crown Rally last year. And Ben has a business in the auto sales, so Footh Auto Sales and Service. Yep. And that's here local in Minneapolis. It's actually in St. Paul.
Yep.
And Ben, why don't you go ahead and tell the show a little bit about yourself, start off with your background, and what was your childhood like?
So starting off childhood. So first off, first generation business owner. So, not cut from a lot of the same cloth as some other people, but I'm super grateful for it. So born and raised on the west side of St. Paul. Mother, very large family from the west side, one of 9. Father's one of 4. They met as high school sweethearts. I'm the youngest of 3, so I have an older brother and an older sister. And really interesting upbringing, very hardworking family. Parents raised me very, very old school, right? In the West Side community back in those days, you were raised by the community. Imagine 2 very large families in the area. So I was related to half the community, right? So very, very grateful. Father worked for the Postal Service for 30 years. Mom was a bus driver and then got into healthcare and ended up being a dialysis technician.
Wow.
And so
that's a swing.
Yeah, definitely a big swing. And not a family that really had a ton of business experience at that time, but lots and lots and lots of hard work, and one of the first things I can tell you, one of the first businesses I jumped to as a kid, 14 years old, walked into Sears in Rice Street of St. Paul, and my father walked me in and said, "No, this is gonna be the last pair of shoes I get you." And at the time I remember kind of feeling panicked, and obviously my parents provided, but I remember feeling that panic of like, wow, this is it, And I was already mowing lawns with my brother, and ended up jumping headfirst into the lawn care business with my brother. So we had a lawn care business. Literally, I think he started that when I was about 11, and then I ended up joining him in lawn care and really started taking over the reins in lawn care, and then all the way through high school, had a lawn care business, So mowed lawns, trimmed bushes, stained decks, did whatever it took to provide. And paid my own way up, bought my own first car. And I'll never forget when I turned 18, my dad walked up to me and I had this car I really loved. It was an IROC Z28 Camaro, T-tops, 5.7, 2-port injection, had like 34,000 miles on it. Bought it from a guy that was a mechanic over at the airport in Blaine. And my dad walks up to me, whips out a sheet of paper and says, "It's $10,987. He said, "This is what you owe me." For what? Activities fees, I borrowed you money here, going back, no idea. He tracked every single thing, and I paid cash for that Camaro. And I thought to myself, I got an idea. I paid $4,500 for it. And my dad was, had a couple of beers in him. I said, "I'll give you the title to that Camaro. We're even." He goes, "Done." So I went over to the computer, typed it up, Microsoft Word, full purchase agreement. I thought I got him, right? So I give him the title. I settle my debt, My dad brings the vehicle, and I thought I pulled a quick one, right? He brings the vehicle to the local dealership, gets $13,000 for it. So he ended up profiting on settling my debt. So I learned a valuable lesson right then and there to make sure you study the market a little bit, So so pretty cool upbringing. Fun fact, so while I was doing the car business in high school, the lawn care business, I really loved cars. So my brother was dating this girl at the time that worked in like the business development center at the local Chevrolet dealership. So I actually got a job as a lot guy making like $7 an hour my junior year of high school because I just wanted to be around cars. So was still mowing lawns, still had the lawn care business, but really, really, really enjoyed being around vehicles. So got a job working in the automotive industry as a lot guy, and that was my introduction at Southview Chevrolet in Inver Grove Heights into the automotive industry. So
man, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So that's how you basically got the training or the understanding in the beginning, infancy stages.
Right.
And then at some point you transitioned into having your own dealership, your own service center.
Right.
So in between then, as far as education goes, how did that look for you?
Well, so let me back up. My introduction to the car business was really interesting. In business, we all hear the cliches that exist, right? Like surrounding yourself by successful people and doing these things. Well, another fun fact is I was a really solid basketball player, right? So I'm a lot guy. I'm moving cars around a lot, and I don't know if anybody remembers the name Denny Hecker. Denny Hecker owned several dealerships in the area at the time. Well, this guy walks up to me on the lot, And he says, gosh, this lot really looks like trash. This vehicle's parked everywhere. I had no idea who he was. And I looked at him and I said, why don't you go inside and tell these lazy salesmen to start parking their cars, their test drives. And he walks back inside, walks away, doesn't say a word. And all of a sudden I get paged to the general manager's office. What is going on here? It was Denny Hecker. And I had no idea at the time. I had no idea who this guy was, so I called him out. So I get called in the GM's office. I figured, well, I'm fired for sure now, right? Because on the way in, a salesman's like, you met Mr. Hecker. So I walk into the office. He goes, I don't know what you said to Denny, but he likes you. So built a relationship with the GM who found out I played basketball, started doing a 3-on-3 league on Thursday nights with him. And I was the sandbagger, right? I could shoot the ball, I could dribble. He talked me into sales. So that's when I got into automotive sales. And that is when, my business sense kicked in. I saw 30 salesmen and I'm watching guys who are successful, guys who are lazy. And I'm trying to piece, okay, well, there was a guy there named Jack Morissette who was he's a legend. This guy's like Hall of Fame car business guy. Jack focused on relationship. So what I learned is, okay, I need to mirror what this guy's doing. I need to take a look at the top successful guys and figure out what attributes they have. So I did that. I applied relationship and learned it. Just tried to mirror exactly what Jack did, and I experienced success. As I got into sales, experienced success. And time went on, and again, summers are off, right? So I'm working hard in the summers. Ended up selling the lawn care business, continuing the automotive industry.
Who'd you end up selling it to? Not necessarily like a person, was it another business?
No, it was just a local neighborhood kid.
Okay.
Yeah, local neighborhood kid. And it was good. Lawn care was great, but it was a lot of cash. I look back and I'm like, there's so much peace involved in it. Customer relationships are great, but there's so much peace. I always joke about all the stresses in owning multiple businesses now. It's like, I miss the days of just having to worry about doing a good job, mowing the lawn and collecting the payment, right? But I loved it. The best part about the lawn care was you meet all sorts of interesting people. Met an old guy in his 80s, Mr. Tacky, that worked for Lockheed Martin and did a lot of engineering and development, R&D for World War II. So just a lot of cool relationships that you meet, and those relationships form you. And ultimately, I didn't know that, but I was developing the skills that I needed to be successful in the automotive industry, right? And as I entered the automotive industry, especially this time, you're talking early 2000s, right? It was so different back then, right? So I learned, I looked really young, and there's a cliche that follows car salesmen. So right up front, how I sold was just transparency. We'd walk up to cars and, well, this price it's 21 grand. They would go, well, why does it say 27.9 on the window? I said, listen, I'm a high school kid. I'm going to be going to college soon. I'm not interested in making a lot of money. I'm interested in selling a lot of cars and just taking care of you. So I would disarm. Everybody knew the margins were crazy, but I would immediately disarm that mistrust and just tell people it's not. That was the truth. For me, I'm looking at it like, hey, if I can make a couple $100 a car, and that's what really drew me to the automotive industry. I could be around machines I loved and not have to labor mowing 60 lawns a week and staining decks. I can just build relationships and make money, right? So on top of doing something that I really enjoyed. So
had some volume.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of volume. I got a lot of guys didn't like me because I was on the C team, which means see you when you see. I had such a good relationship with the owners and the managers that I could kind of come and go as I wanted. I'm running out of school, going and selling cars. Weekends I'm selling cars, and it was a great time, man. And ultimately ended up getting an offer to go play some college basketball, and nothing big, D3. I'm only 5'9", so I couldn't go too far. And it went down to St. Mary's, and I was pretty independent. My parents kind of raised us with the mentality of like, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn, you're on your own. So by the time I went to college, I wasn't really interested in the massive parties and doing all that. I was interested in making money. So I was only there down in Winona for about a year, and then transferred back. And I was going to school, made a decision to go to school for criminal justice law enforcement. So transferred back, decided to go to Metro State at night to go for criminal justice law enforcement, and then worked at the dealership during the day and weekends, and went right back to the same dealership. So
how old were you around this time?
Oh goodness, that would have been 19.
Okay.
Yeah, 19 years old.
So coming into adulthood.
Yeah, coming into adulthood, and went back, sold cars, had success. During this time frame, aftermarket accessories, big 20-inch rims were like 10 grand. So what kind of started to put me on the map as I walked past this desk, guy sitting at the desk. I'm like, why does this guy have a desk? He's not in finance. Well, he's the aftermarket guy. So I walked into the GM's office and said, I want that guy's desk. And what do you mean you want his desk? How about I put you in the department, show me what you can do? So at this time, accessories, aftermarket was just starting to pick up. And walked back into finance. I'm a young kid. And I said, hey, I want to buy everybody pizza. I'll never forget the finance manager's name was Chip. Chip looks at me, why are you buying pizza? A young kid out here. I said, I want you to add a step to the process. I want, before you finance this vehicle, I want you to ask them if you had a chance to see the aftermarket manager. So I added a step in the process so that before they went back into finance, because we could finance rims, tires, bug shields. Oh, it doesn't have a sunroof, we can add a sunroof, right? So I added a step to the process and literally quadrupled the revenue in aftermarket in 1 month just by adding a step. And then that process carried on to all the other dealerships in the chain. So that kind of put me on the map. It was experiencing a lot of success, man. It was a good time, so.
And what about mentorship in this process? I know you talked a little bit about, you touched on one individual.
Yeah.
But how many mentors, and I guess what role did they play for you?
Right, so I would say, Jack was definitely a mentor. Jack is the type of guy where he'd mentor anybody, man. Anybody that wanted help, he would give help to. The general manager at the time, his name was Eric DeLacy. He also was, part owner of the stores. And he was really a huge mentor for me, and that kind of carries into the next part. I hit a point where I wanted something different. I mean, I thought I wanted to be a cop. I was going to school to be a cop, so I joined local police department as a police reserve. So I was a South St. Paul Police Reserve, and decided like maybe law enforcement's a path. So I walked into his office, and I always chuckle because I've been with my wife since high school, and I'll never forget the conversation when I made the decision to move back from Winona. And my mother-in-law now, at the time I was dating her daughter, looked at me and she said, if you're gonna marry my daughter, you better get a college degree. And I chuckled because at the time, I'm making $80,000, $90,000, substantially more than a public school teacher at the time. And I'm chuckling because it's like, there's such a value at that time placed on you need to get your 4-year degree, and I was really at a kind of a crossroads in life where I was like, oh, what am I gonna do?
You're making 90 grand in the early 2000s.
Correct, yeah. 88 grand, I think, was right about what I made at the time. And I saved nothing. I mean, I'm the guy buying everything for everybody, may or may not have had a fake ID, so I'm going out, partying, you know what I mean? Like, I was living high on the hog, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was at the point where I really loved the automotive industry, but I really was getting pulled towards law enforcement. I had my dad in my ear about, providing for your family, so I actually went to go take the postal exam. Thinking maybe, hey, I can put food on the plate. This might be a path. Halfway through the exam, I put the pen down, got up and walked out. Just decided then and there, I'm very fortunate for what the government provided, but that just wasn't my path. Circled back, walked into Eric's office, and I said, hey, I'm gonna quit. Okay. Didn't fight me on it. That's interesting. Goes by for a little bit. I get a call. Hey, I'm starting my own independent dealership. You may know how to sell cars. You may know how to move cars around a lot. But Eric looked at me and he said, I'll teach you the aspects of the business. And if you decide you want to be a cop, you can still be a reserve cop. You decide to go that path, you can go down that path, right? And so that's what I did. I quit and went and wrote service tickets for a little bit with Routson. Dan Routson owned a service department out in Stillwater. Wrote service tickets for a couple months. Eric opened up. I was his first employee. I was putting desks together. I was, doing everything it took to help him start that business up. And he's right. I learned a lot. And
so he let you peek behind the curtain and actually understand how the business worked.
He did. Yeah. He mentored me, showed me. And again, he came from a franchise mentality, right? So this, I think, was a little new to him going into the independent world. And we had a lot of success right out of the gate. It was different, man. I talk to my employees now all the time about being able to wear different hats. When you open a business, you're the detailer, you're the lock guy, you're the sales guy, you're the finance manager. You have to be willing to do it all, right? And I learned that, and I had an opportunity to look behind the curtain with Eric, and I'm super grateful for it because I did learn a lot, and he brought some other key players in that had more finance experience that I could learn more about how to finance cars. And at the time, I'm working, and then at night, I'm a reserve cop. I'm slapping on the uniform, slapping on the badge. I'm still going to school at night, and it was a grind, man. It was a grind.
Were you single?
No, I've been with my wife since high school. So at the time we were still together. And
wow.
Then, it was wild. It was wild. And interesting enough, I was kind of leaning more towards law enforcement. And I always had this dream of opening a business, right? So kind of back and forth, like, what do I do? And this is what segues into Footh Auto, the first Footh Auto that actually failed. And I was thinking law enforcement. So went home, talked to my wife. We're married now at the time, right?
Any kids?
She's pregnant, unemployed, trying to get hired to be a school teacher. And I look at her and I'm like, I think I want to open a business, and talking to my brother about going into business with him. And she just looks at me and she says, I trust you. She just right then and there didn't fight me on it. Just, if you think it's a good idea, So pretty hardcore faith upbringing, prayed about it.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Where's the faith come into your life? When were you introduced to faith?
From early on. That's one thing, not one thing, one of many things, but we're always in church on Sundays. My parents raised me to have really, really, really strong faith, to put God first. If you talk to my wife, first date we had was McDonald's, and goodness, we just turned 17. I looked at her, and this is like maybe second day, I look at her and I go, if this goes anywhere, our kids will attend a Christian private school. That's my non-negotiable. Keep in mind, her parents are both public school educators, right? So I look at her and I was like, my non-negotiable is a Christian day school, period. And I went to a public high school, that's where we met, but I went through a Christian day school, kindergarten through 8th grade. So she didn't fight me on it. She didn't fight me on it. And it's always funny because that's a pretty serious topic to handle,
17 years old?
17 years old. And I was like, this is a non-negotiable. I valued that upbringing so much, And I take a look at it, and that's ironic because that same school is where our own kids go now, and that's one thing that, my encouragement to other people as well is, I love first and foremost, I'm a child of God, but your next most important thing is your family, right? And the one thing that you get to control is, it's tough, man. You get home from a hard day's work, you get your kids for a couple hours. Who has your kids for the first part of the day? So that's why for me it was such a non-negotiable, because I wanted to make sure that my kids went there. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I'll tell you what, you talk about faith and how it impacts me. I mean, how long do you want this podcast to be? And my entire life in business and life, I've prayed for doors to be open and doors to be closed according to God's will, not my will. So every conversation that I've had with business, and people ask me, a lot of people that don't know me and kind of get a grasp of where I'm at now, they think I'm crazy. And I don't think I know. I've been exposed to so many different circles now in life. I wasn't raised with money. I've been around that crowd. It's my comfort zone, truthfully. My comfort zone is grinders, is very blue collar. But when you start to see successful families and successful groups and successful entrepreneurs, you learn it's really a mindset shift. And one thing that scared me to death, it wasn't failure, it was regret. And my dad, if he watches this podcast, I don't know how he's gonna feel about this, but I always remember, I did this and I could have done this and I should have done this. And I remember just thinking as a kid, I'm a Christian, right? And I believe there's a heaven and there's a hell, and I'm going to one or the other, and I'm saved by the grace of Jesus. Then how big of a risk are these risks that we take on earth, right? What it came down to for me is really how risky is it, right? I know I'm going to heaven and all these financial things, and I always divert back to, and I've really struggled with this verse a lot, because the automatic default in faith is, 1 Timothy 6:10 is the root of all evil is the love of money, right? And people confuse that with money is the root of all evil. We always hear that. It's not money, it's the love of money, it's the love of things. So I always try to keep that in mind, because it's really easy to fall into those traps in life, in business, whether you have money or don't have money. And I come back to, what did I prize? Why do I love cars? I love fast cars. I love shiny things. I love, parents who worked overtime to buy things and have things. And I realized kind of that life hack right away that, none of this is really that risky. It's really not, because our time on this earth is so incredibly temporary that we think it's risky to take a risk and what if it doesn't work? And I'll tell you what, when we first opened, we made the decision to open the business. Going back to that, the original Footh Automotive with my brother.
Yeah, because you mentioned you had one that failed.
Yeah.
I didn't know that story.
Yeah, so Footh Automotive was opened with my brother and his fiance, and we failed in 6 months. 6 months we failed. And we had a small credit line, and we had this rep for the bank named Christina, and I built a really good, comes back to relationship, right? Business was failing, we're gonna go our separate ways, and I was able to scrape together some money. I was completely broke. By the grace of God, my father-in-law believed in me. My dad believed in me. Now imagine this guy goes into his postal retirement, takes out 20 grand. My father-in-law comes up and says 20 grand. Okay, give you 5% return and pay you over 5 years. And so when I reopened, I actually had $14,000 in debt. So I called Christina from the bank that had the bank credit line, $100,000 credit line. I said, hey, if you ask for financials, because I want to open up Footh Auto Sales, not automotive. Automotive is failing. It's done. If you transfer that credit line to me, I give you my word, I'll pay back every penny plus interest if I fail. And she goes, I would never do this to anyone. And it's funny because if Next Gear's watching and Scott Maybe's the CEO now and I have a relationship with him, or the president, he laughed because this would never happen these days. She transferred that credit line over, and after paying off some debts, I had $24,000, 4 cars on the lot. I mean, I was completely, you want to talk about back against the wall. And then we experienced some success. Success is all relative, right? I was able to pay back my father and father-in-law, brought them both to Mexico. And here's the funniest thing. So I'm high on the hog, right? I'm going to bring them back to Mexico. I'm going to pay him back plus interest. Brought my father-in-law new clubs. I'm taking care of everybody, settled that debt within that first year. I had $44,000. That's it. I had 44 grand in credit line, but I was grateful enough, after I paid him back, still only had 44 grand. I thought it was I was comfortable, right? And I chuckle about that. Business was difficult for a couple years after that too. So my back's against the wall, man. And I'm start to feel the pressure of okay, this is a decent amount of money from perspective, from the angle of how I was raised. That was a lot of money. But I was struggling. I mean, by the grace of God, I go back to my wife being okay with me opening a business and even continuing the business. Even after the failure, she was like, I trust you. She gets hired to be a school teacher that covers the birth of my daughter by the grace of God. I was so grateful to have her teacher's wage because we had benefits and at least we had a way to be able to afford where we lived. And back against the wall, what am I gonna do? And I'll never forget it. Successful company called Whip Air. Grew up with Charlie, 3rd generation business, very successful. I called Charlie up. I said, hey, I need some advice, man. I said, I don't know what to do, at this point. And so we meet at Applebee's and we go back and forth and they do airplanes, right? They do float planes and, rehab airplanes. And he looks at me and, you don't want to work for me. And he's like, Ben, you have to deep dive into your financials. Now at this time, I'm doing all my own title, I'm my own bookkeeper, I'm doing everything myself. He said, you have to deep dive into your financials. You have to take a look at where you're experiencing success in your sales. And you have to really get into the metrics of it. I went home, there's this crazy thing called Facebook. And I'm like, I only sold 9 cars a month before, but I'm 3 were off of Facebook. I didn't spend any money on this. So I throw a Hail Mary, I reach out to Facebook, called a number. Well, they had just started doing the business advertising. I committed 25% of my available cash to Facebook the next month. So at this time, now keep in mind, we're doing a couple $100,000 a year in business total, gross revenue. I commit to Facebook marketing, but what did I market? Not, we're the cheapest payment, or we're, all these cliche and generic marketing, but the original way I sold cars when I first entered, relationship, transparency. Right?
Went back to the basics of what worked.
Went back to the basics, went back to people, taking care of people, and looking at it long-term play. Not, can I take your head off today? How big are my margins now? But I want to sell your neighbor, your pastor, your friend's cars. And we marketed that, and Facebook was so inexpensive to advertise. We went from a couple $100,000 a year in business to 9 million within 4 or 5 years, that quick. And it was, and then it was a lot of fear along the way. It wasn't easy, right? Imagine.
That's a lot of scale.
That's a lot of scale. And I'm hiring, I have a 2-office building. The lot was zoned for 31 cars. I got it rezoned for 50. We had 76 cars sardined on the lot, multiple salesmen tripping over each other. And this whole time, I'm getting more money from Next Gear. I'm calling them up and, I'm at the auction. My uncle's retired. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I need another $250,000." So I'm pushing the envelope. I need inventory, right? So I kept growing that credit line, growing the relationships, and and again, I have at that time my sister took over the bookkeeping, thank goodness. But I'm doing all my own titling. I'm doing all my own accounts receivable. My wife's a school teacher, And that has its own stress. And, you know, we have our daughter, so I'm keeping her, by her choice. She's like, I don't want to know if we have money, if we don't have money. You know what I mean? Like, she didn't want the stress. She had to be an effective teacher. She's going to school for her master's at the time too. And it was crazy, man. We started to build it and build it and build it. At the time, I rented the building. And yeah, it was wild. It was wild.
So you just said you were renting the building.
Yep.
So you had a lot, a building, one building?
Just one little 2-office building, no garage.
And just sales?
Just sales.
And then you get into service at some point?
Yeah, well, at that time, I mean, imagine, so there's a Dairy Queen across the street, went out of business. So now we're stacking their lot with cars. City's getting mad at me because they're not zoned to be a car dealership. So I'm putting cars the next city over in Inver Grove. And goodness, we were sticking and moving. It was, I was renting a lot, renting it. And I mean, at this point, I'm married to the lot. Right, and he knows it. The guy that owns it knows it. And I hope he watches this. So we're growing. Now keep in mind, I always tell people in certain topics, I'm not the most intelligent guy, but one thing I'm really good at is paying attention to people who are intelligent in certain markets. If I want to ask about commercial real estate, I'm calling you, right? If I want to ask about topics that I don't know about, and that's the biggest thing, my biggest advice for people that might be watching this who are self-starters, or even maybe you're a seasoned business person, don't stop learning. The biggest indicator for failure that I've seen in multiple businesses, friends, is I'm telling you, people who they get too overconfident and they think they got to figure it out. You got to be able to stick and move. I was blessed by the grace of God to have that door open with Facebook, and I'm constantly reevaluating what's the next Facebook. How do I have that cutting edge, right? And I think arrogance in business and in life is the pride comes before the fall, man. And that's one thing that I learned in business. So when I hire people, every single employee I hire a successful mechanic. Okay, you came from a successful business. Don't be afraid to walk into my office and go, you need to do this, or we're doing this wrong. I want to learn because I can learn from people I hire. I can learn from friends. So I started buying real estate, bought my first townhome. You want to talk about God, opening doors and closing doors. I'm scared to death. My family I don't come from a real estate family. Go to look at this townhome. Townhome was $168,000. Realtor was great gal. Her husband bought a truck for me, and I'm scared to death. And I don't want to buy it. I know I need property because that's what successful people are doing, right? So I take the night to sleep on it. Next morning, Lisa calls me and she says, "Ben, you're sitting down." I said, "Yeah, I'm sure it's sold." I prayed about it. God, open the door, close the door. She says, "You're not going to believe it, but they dropped the price to $124,500, and I told them you take it." I'm like, "Well, perfect." I was kicked through the door. That was my first townhome. I was literally kicked through that door, and I was scared to God. I was scared to death, man. Imagine $44,000. I thought I was balling out. Now I got to put down 25% on this. You know what I mean? But my wife didn't care. Allison didn't care what we drove. She didn't care. And I always come back to this. That lesson of the love of money, and I always say, like, we lived in Newport at the time. We were just as happy bringing the kids to a park in Newport compared to bringing them to Disneyland. It goes back to, and I know a lot of successful business owners talking about having a solid spouse. My wife has been rock solid this entire time. She didn't care what she drove. I'd bring her vehicle in for a detail and I'd sell it. What am I driving now? She didn't care. She didn't care where we lived, what we drove. And that was really, really important to have that rock at home. Through all these difficult times and these ups and downs and these valleys, she was always supportive.
The thing is,
still is supportive.
As a man owning a business, having staff, it's really like having two families.
Yeah.
And when you get done getting put through the ringer over here at work at 8, 12, 16 hours, maybe 12 of it's with your employees, then you got another 2 to 4 hours of doing books and all the other hats you have to wear in the process. And you come home to a nagging wife. I've seen a lot of that with business owners, and it crushes them. There's no support system. But for guys like us that are blessed enough to have a supportive wife, it's awesome, man. And it's such a launching pad because you come in, you get refreshed, you get encouraged, instead of beat down and worked over. Absolutely. And then feeling like a whipped wet dog.
100%. And you see that a lot. I not to say it's just American culture, but I see that a ton. And not to say any one marriage is perfect, right? Every marriage has its ups, its downs. it's trials, it's temptations. But at the end of the day, man, I feel so blessed to have a woman in my life who was with me when I was broke and still with me throughout the grind. I was just thinking, I was driving on the way here and I'm like, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm gonna do when I grow up. Like I'm 41 years old, right? Like I'm thinking about, we've talked about this, like where do you see your future, retirement? And then I got this other thought in my ear of like, Sam Walton was 44 when he started Walmart. McDonald's after 50. KFC, you could go down the line of Home Depot. All these guys started successful companies in their 50s and their 60s, right? So it's, I think it comes back down to purpose, and I think that's another key part. Growing up on the west side of St. Paul, I've caught a lot of flack over the time over the last few years with all the corporations, all these entities, woke entities people want you to give to. I don't do corporate interests. Okay, I don't care. I'm a big firearm enthusiast. I don't give money to the NRA. I keep my money in the neighborhood. It comes back to that, right? The kids that I've coached on the west side, and I live in Rosemount, I coached my son all the way up through West Side Sports. My money stays in the community. I do not write checks to corporate entities. No offense to anybody who donates to Susan G. Coleman. That's great, good for you. I want to see the shoes on the kids' feet. I want to see my money actively working in the community. And this entire time, it's crazy. You mentioned, I talked about $44,000 and feeling successful. I owned a business. So how was I viewed by people I grew up with? Oh, he's rich. So I never said no. When kids needed help, I never said no. To this day, unless I can see a direct impact in the community, and until our country, in my opinion, gets back to that, keeping your money in the community and giving back. And that's really what it comes down to is, okay, you can make money doing anything. But for me, it comes back to purpose. My number one thing is my faith in Christ. What impact am I going to have on other people with what God's blessed me with?
And speaking on that, I want to pull on that thread a little bit. You talked about not growing up around money. Mm-hmm. This is something highly relatable for me. As your business starts to do well, as your family starts to grow, you got people that, I don't want to say that you left behind, but you outgrew where you were, mm-hmm. and you moved up. People back here, back home, the people that knew you when you were broke, what responses were you seeing as you started to grow your business, grow your family, grow your faith? What was that like? Haters? People cheering you on?
Yeah, both. It's interesting question. My grandmother always said, you'll be a very blessed man when you're elderly if you can count your good friends on a single hand. And usually one of them is your spouse. So I was very blessed to have my grandma Shirley in my life at a very young age. I spent every morning with her before school and every afternoon, and she spoke to me like an adult. I remember being 12 years old and she said, you come from 3 generations of alcoholics. So you need to be mindful of this, of an addictive personality, because it plagues our family. She spoke to me like an adult. Growing up where I grew up, and I grew up on the west side of St. Paul, but I was blessed enough, my parents sent me to a Christian day school. So I ran around a 4-community area, knew a little bit of people, West St. Paul, Inver Grove, South St. Paul, West Side. I knew people from a little bit of every community. Try to teach my kids to respect everyone. So I had a lot of issues when I went to South St. Paul. South St. Paul at the time was way different than it is now, right? It was very redneck. It's funny because I used to fight with rednecks who wore cowboy boots, right? Now I love cowboy boots, but I always tried to be respectful to people. A lot of those same guys I had beef with bought cars from me. I had a lot of people that were really supportive when I first opened the business. You talk about the West Side community, I can go back to some big names that were supportive of me. I would not be where I'm at today had I not had those relationships. As far as friendships and haters, I was always really clear on who was who growing up because I was raised by parents who taught me to be able to tell the difference, right? So you have acquaintances in life, and sometimes they can be supporters. Sometimes they're your biggest closet haters. My biggest thing, I've been really blessed. One of my good buddies is a West Sider. His name is Marcos. Surround yourself with people who defend your name when you're not in the room. And I've been blessed to have key people from my upbringing that will do that. And in the same breath, I know sometimes people sit in the same room and have your same last name and maybe don't treat the same way, right? Like I identify the fact that sometimes your family doesn't always share your last name and vice versa, you know? But you talk about circles, the circles are real, and perspective is a funny thing. People may look at me now. There's a guy I met on Crown Rally that gave me a different perspective. Fred, if you're watching this, our conversation was probably only 10 minutes long, but you gave me some insight on real estate, and I took it and I ran with it. Now I'm buying properties with cash. I'm rehabbing them. I'm converting them, either flipping them or converting them to rentals by cash out refinancing them. These are simple things that I learned from Crown Rally, from Fred, that, you know, and he may have just thought it was a quick conversation, but he gave it to me. I did the research. I started to dive into it, and I started to use my cash in a different way. That was a different circle that I would have never been exposed to, that I'd never been exposed to growing up, right? So I always have the perspective where, yes, I'm very blessed for where I'm at in life, but I think success is all perspective. You know, I warned some young guys around me as of late that if you're so driven that you're willing to sacrifice relationship for money, you may end up with a lot of money someday, but you'll be a very lonely person. And I've seen that. I've seen people sacrifice their values, cut other people down, and ultimately that is my nightmare. And that's what I try to advise people against. And it comes back to that, 1 Timothy 6:10 is, what do you value? It's are you valuing, your faith, your relationships with others, how you impact others? Or are you more worried about getting that next thing, that next shiny thing, that image of success, that perspective of success, right?
When you talked about you really enjoy being able to give to the community, mm-hmm. and you've talked a little bit about mentorship that you've received. Mm-hmm. In my journey of entrepreneurship and growing and scaling family, business, faith in God, I've also had the opportunity to mentor people along the way. Mm-hmm. And not all of those relationships have necessarily been good ones. Mm-hmm. As you get closer together and they start to glean some of your success, mm-hmm. it can cause tension, it can cause separation, and in some cases it can cause division. Yep. Have you experienced any of that?
Yes. My wife asked me this morning, we're having coffee. She said, how deep are you going to go into some of these topics? And I said, well, if there's one thing I learned in business, is partnerships are nearly impossible. And I am a very old school handshake kind of a guy. I recognize the fact that my kindness is a huge strength, but it's also my biggest blind spot. And I think people are attracted to you. Now that I have a Lamborghini, people want to know. They want the secret sauce because they want to know, how did you get to that point, right?
The secret sauce.
The secret sauce, right? Everyone wants to know, like, how did you do it?
All the time.
Like, dude, and it's funny. I chuckle when I hear these young kids. If you're watching this, if you're going to school to be an entrepreneur, you're not an entrepreneur. I got news for you. If you're not selling sneakers, mowing lawns, if you don't have, not to say you can't be successful, right? But there is a clear difference between somebody who is a hardcore grinder who's going to figure it out versus someone, I'm telling you, like, I met with the guy who was in charge of the School of Business for Concordia because I had this pride issue. Like, maybe I go to school, get a business degree. Met with him. He's like, would you be interested in coming to talk to my class? He's like, listen, you're already doing it. He goes, you just might not know the educational terminology for it, but what I'm teaching is exactly what you're doing. He's like, you don't need this degree. He goes, you just want it for the piece of paper. And he was absolutely right. So I didn't do it, right? But it's the truth. It's the truth. It's no different than our parents. If you want to be successful, you need to go get a college degree. So that you sit through a 4-year university and spend $30,000, $40,000 a year to learn general education. I'll never forget, I went to St. Mary's. And my first class was like basic language. I was blessed to go to a good school who challenge you. Like, are we really talking about basic language in a college level class? And I raised my hand, I asked the question. And the teacher at the time was a brother, so he's a priest. He says, come see me after class. I thought he was upset with me. Go into his office, reaches down the bottom drawer, never forget it, pulls out a bottle of Johnny Blue Label. He says, we have dumbed down our education because the majority of these kids coming out of Illinois, the standards for education are so subpar that we have to dumb down our curriculum for them. Literally, that's what he says to me, and it dawned right there, like, so what am I getting for my money? What am I getting for my money? And that's what I realized. I really realized that my wife and I argue on this from time to time because she's an educator. She got her master's in educational leadership. Well, I'm on our school's version of the school board. And we go back and forth with how important is education at what role in your life, and is the system set up? Is it designed to create laborers, or is it designed to create critical thinkers? People who are going to go out there and make a change in the world. I would argue, the earlier, I would argue that not all of them, but a lot of the vast majority of our public school system is set up to create laborers. And I recognize that. I was a 2.6 student, 2.6 C student. I had this pre-IB class and getting straight A's. Teacher pulls me aside. He says, Footh, why are your grades dropping? I said, well, it's really simple, Mr. Anderson. I said, I got to mow lawns. Basketball season, I got fall cleanup. Basketball season's here, so I'm going to participate in class, but my schoolwork's going to be about a C level, maybe B, but I'll make sure I'm active. He just looked at me, wow, that was a pretty mature answer. Thank you. You know what I mean? I made a conscious decision that I'm going to apply myself less towards the homework and the worksheets, and the mindless worksheets, and I'll still be interactive in class, but I got to go make money. Yeah, definitely against the norm these days, for sure.
So back to the Footh Auto.
Yep.
And then Footh Service.
Yep.
You have, at some point, you brought those together.
Yep.
How did that happen?
So COVID hit. I went against the norm. A lot of dealerships, and I know big dealerships, successful, great group of guys. The Jordat brothers own MTH, great guys, and we debated on this. And he was right. I was wrong. He said, inventory's going to get tough. And I went the opposite way. I had a $1.3 million line. I was over max. I had 176 cars in stock, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to pay off my credit line. So we liquidated inventory. I paid off my credit line. My mentality was, we're going to go into this. I don't want to have any debt. A lot of dealerships didn't do it. A lot of dealerships doubled down, increased their inventory, and were very successful for it. We had two different approaches. But backing up a little bit, that little lot I was renting, I mentioned Eric DeLacy when I helped him open his lot. That's my lot now. That's my main location now. So I ended up buying him out in 2019. He was ready to retire. I bought him out, so I had two locations, but the original one I only rented. COVID hits. I shrink my inventory down from 100 and almost 180 cars to only one lot. We had about 90 cars on my main lot. That rental lot, or the one I was renting, sat empty. I chest moved a little bit. Larry, I hope you're watching this. I thought, man, this is my time to buy this. Panic is in the air. People panic, right? They make really, really brash decisions. And so I started lining up the financing. He calls me up. I think it's ready to sell. I think it's time to sell that lot to you. Well, of course, the economy's collapsing. What a good time to sell. Paid $330,000 for it. Met him for dinner. I was going to do traditional SBA financing. Sets up the purchase agreement. He set it up thinking that, knowing, I think, he was buying himself time, that if the economy rebounded, he was going to be able to pull the plug because the SBA wouldn't be able to close the loan in time. So guess what happened? He tried. Well, you're not going to be able to get financing for that now, and we're coming down to the purchase day. I said, what are you doing Wednesday? Meet me at DCA Title, I'll pay you cash. Called up the SBA, called up my bank, and he contacted our SBA rep, and I said, can I refinance it if I want it cash? Well, absolutely. Wrote a check for it, closed, and bought the lot. And I think he wasn't super happy about it, but I'm like, I paid $4,000 a month on this lot for 10 years. You got your money, right? And now I rent that lot to another dealer who's wildly successful. When I was at that little lot, I was paying $40,000 to $50,000 a month in service bills. So now that I got this main lot, now I have my own service department, right? And that transitioned us into our next thing. I met with some of the most successful service departments that I saw at the time that were independent lots. And because I wanted to know, again, I don't know. I was part of the franchise world. DeLacy really didn't do a lot of service. He had one tech. We have all these bays. We only have one tech. But I want to know, how do I platform this? So I went and met with some dealerships that I saw successful, started putting together their traits and thought, okay, the most common thing is we're getting a lot of repairs that aren't done correctly by inexperienced mechanics. It's tough to find good mechanics. You go to most dealerships, including franchise, you get an oil change guy, a suspension guy. He's certified for electrical. He's transmissions. He's engines. I thought, well, I need an experienced guy. Well, one of the techs that was working at the shop I was sending the work to was that guy, Timmy. So brought Timmy on board. He ended up leaving there, coming to work for me. And then as we started to get momentum, I realized, well, there's something to be said about service. I always heard the terminology, service covers your overhead, right? That was my goal, was to scale service to that point. Now we have 6 bays, 4 technicians. We service commercial accounts. My guys can work on diesels. My Porsche 992, Mikey and I ordered them together. We did the performance stage 2 mods on those. They can build race cars. I mean, these guys, these guys got Chevy tattoos. These guys are car enthusiasts. And that's what I learned with mechanics. Pay them what they're worth, but hire for passion, right? The guy that sits down that's just looking to make, I don't want that. I want the person that's passionate. I want to bring them to the track with me. I want to go race with them, you know what I mean? And I built great family friendships with these guys now. And it's, you know, people think the margins are crazy in service. They're not as high as people think, but it pays your overhead, right? And I really, really enjoy, I enjoy fast things. We know this, right? So surrounding myself with guys that have that passion, that can help my car go faster, love it. So very, very cool.
And then you get this all built up. Going back a little bit,
Yep.
was there ever a point in this timeline throughout your life that you were just flat broke?
I was pretty much flat broke when I started the original Footh Automotive, continued Footh Auto Sales. I mean, my back has been against the wall so many times. One thing I learned is my cash doesn't make money in the bank. I want my cash out on the road making money. I mentioned real estate. Right now, I got 4 or 5 houses I own cash that we're rehabbing, that we're converting to rentals. I mean, it's broke as perspective. There are guys watching this podcast that are significantly more wealthy than me when take a look at my net worth and be like, that dude's broke, right? I realized broke is all perspective. Like, I was like, you know, and how far do you want to push it, right? I remember going back to Mikey MTH, he's like, you got to scale, they have multiple locations. And I'm like, you know, for me, let me boil it down for you. When I decided to go into business for myself, I'm killing myself in the automotive industry, giving it my all. I'm newly married, my wife's pregnant, comes back to your values. I opened my business not because I thought, oh, I'm gonna be a real estate guy and I wanna own a Lamborghini. I wanted to be home for my wife and I wanted to be able to raise my kids. That was my grounding. So I always come back to that. I always come back to, how are these decisions going to impact my family? The biggest currency that you can't buy, but you can spend a lot of it is time. And if you're not careful with your time, so I've been really overly conscious about where I spend my time, how I spend my time, and it's a constant reminder for me is how does it impact, you know, my legacy is my children, it's not my businesses. You know, I tell my kids, I encourage them in a much different way that I was encouraged, and that's, if you call me when you're 30 years old and you're doing anything except for what you love, I'll be disappointed. I don't care if it's making ice cream cones, a school teacher, selling cars, you want to own the next version of Walmart, just follow your passions. I don't want my kids to be pigeonholed into a system because the system told them, I need an education for this, or I need to put food on the plate. No, follow your passion and create success within your passion, whatever that looks like. Failure, man, my back is against the wall so many times. There's days I wake up today where I feel like my back's against the wall, right? Like, as from a perspective standpoint, it's like, man, where do I want to be? You know, where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? So.
And how do you think that impacts you? I guess that's where I was going out with the question is, and you touched on it a little bit already, but when your back's against the wall, is that the fire that you need? Do you feel like that's sometimes what really motivates you?
So I'll be honest, we talked about mindset. Sometimes I almost feel broken because I feel like I'm most comfortable with my back against the wall. And you run in circles with people who come from a lot of money. And growing up, you're almost taught to be haters. Like, I remember playing St. Thomas and I would like hate on these guys, man, arrogant, rich kids, right? But then as you surround yourself, and now I'm very grateful for the relationships I've built within this community for my other businesses as well, but you realize their mindset for success is so different, right? It's so different than what your mindset was. But my issue a lot of times was I feel like sometimes I make poor decisions just to put my back against the wall. So it's really over evaluating, okay, am I doing this because there's actual opportunity or potential here, or do I just like being uncomfortable, right? And I know that, you know, they always, all these other snippets on Instagram, you know, get uncomfortable. It's almost become a comfort zone for me to be in that struggle. And I've recognized that, like, okay, life's going good, meaning not just financially, but I have the time. I have the time to bring my kids fishing, to coach their teams. Sometimes I feel like I'm running out there, maybe jumping into businesses out of kindness because I'm trying to pull people up and I'm looking for that grind. It's almost like it feels like you become addicted to that grind where I really enjoy building things, and I really enjoy this game we call life. Because again, it's temporary, right? So I'm trying to be more conscientious of those decisions that I'm making, because I recognize that it almost feels like a sickness. So,
do you have anything that you've spun off? Any businesses you spun off to try and help other people out?
Good question. So, no businesses that I've spun off. I've had a lot of people come to me with ideas. Like I had a local school come to me like, hey, what if we rented some warehouse space and started like a machine shop and got into more of the trades, recognizing that a lot of these public schools stopped offering trades. Like I had a woodworking class, there was a small engine class. So I've been presented with opportunities, but not a lot of time. So I would definitely love to be more involved with something like that. But for the time being, a lot of my help is directly with church programs, school programs, community programs. I always chuckle when these youth associations come to me. The hockey association will come to me. Yeah, we're looking for new Nike jerseys. And I always chuckle. My first question is, do you do business with me? And if you don't, go ask the businesses that you support. That's my main rule in life, is I'm gonna put food on the plate of the people that put food on my plate. And it ain't about getting a good deal, okay? There's a little sneaker shop not far from here in Eden Prairie Mall, Soul Stadium. Good dudes, good kids. I walk in there and I'm like, I want these guys to do well. So I call them up, I'm looking for a pair of Nikes for my son, and they send me a link. Well, you buy them and I'll pay you over. If you really value the relationships and the people that you know and love, you wanna pay them, right? So as I'm giving money to associations, they better support me, or the cause better be really, really good,
That's very underrated, by the way, because a lot of times in the circle where people see that you're successful with something,
Yep.
It's almost like they just assume, hey, I should have that for free.
Yep.
Maybe it's your time, maybe it's your talent.
And that's mindset. And when you come from where we come from, it's not, I don't get angry, because I recognize that we're all, to a certain extent, we're all products of our environment. I recognize that. I'm Lebanese, man. I'm hot-headed, right? So I recognize that, like, I'm quick to fight. If someone disrespects me, that's just how I was raised, right? I'll give you an example. You want to talk about quick to fight? I remember being a kid. My mother came from a big family, boxers. 3 of my uncles were Golden Glove boxers. I remember my neighbor spraying my sister off her bike with a hose. My sister runs down the block crying. Ice cream man comes by, I'm drinking, got my red, white, and blue pop. Neighbor comes down swearing. My mom walks out there. My mom is on the boulevard. My mom is 5 feet tall, Lebanese woman, and she's pounding the neighbor. And I'm eating my popsicle. Like, this is normal. You settled it with your fists, and then you were fine. That was the environment. And I chuckle nowadays because that's not the truth. I think we should get back to, I think people haven't been hit in the face enough, right? I think sometimes it's okay to settle your differences as men and then have a beer about it. But that's how I was raised, that very old school mentality of you settle it and then you be a man, you shake hands and you get past it, right?
Old school values.
Old school values, man. And I'm grateful for it, but I have to check myself sometimes because I know those don't translate into our current day, right? Our current day isn't like that, you know what I mean? People have weapons, but it's very interesting, that's for sure. So definitely. I'm grateful for it, man. I'm grateful for all the experiences that I've had in life. I'm grateful to be able to detach myself and try to do this constantly, trying to look at my behavior, my upbringing, my decisions from a 10-mile view, really, and try to apply that to how I raise my kids. Because I recognize I'm not perfect, and maybe that's not the best mentality. My middle son, he's 13 now.
How old are your kids anyway?
Yeah, so I have a daughter who's 17, just turned 17. My son's 13, and then my youngest son is 7. They're absolutely amazing kids. And such interesting dynamics that they picked up from, because my wife is the complete opposite of me. I'm very emotional, I'm very combative, I'm very much in your face, and she's way more relaxed and passive aggressive. It's polar opposites. That's why it works. She's Norwegian. I got the Middle Eastern and German and completely different backgrounds. But my son, I'll never forget, we're at the park. He was probably 8 years old, 9 years old. And he's like, Dad, these kids are up at the top of the slide. They're bullying all the young kids. And I was like, well, go put them in their place. I'm going to be the tough dad. I'm angry, right? Go put them in his, there's one thing I take very seriously with my kids is you stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. There is a point in time where violence is necessary. And I believe as a man, in order To be respected, you need to be capable of violence. So I try to raise my kids with intention. Understand that Christian love is also a big part of it, right? Again, conditioning and that internal battle of like, when is it acceptable, right? Bullying, I have zero tolerance for. I have zero tolerance for people who take advantage of the weak. Go up there and settle it. I'm thinking this kid's, he walks up there. These kids had to be in 8th grade. My son walks up to him and says, you keep behaving like this and you're gonna end up with no friends. And both the kids looked at each other. He walks right past him and goes down the slide. And I'm like thinking to myself, that's my wife, for sure. Like, she's more of the, cool-headed problem solver, but it's cool. He picked up those different traits. Kid's got a big heart. He's not a fighter like that, but he knows how to handle situations. So I'm like, I'm doing something right, And the first thing was picking the right wife, So my daughter, she got a little bit more of the fight, which, you want your daughter to have that fight, So yeah, it's fun. It's fun stuff.
So speaking of the 10-mile view, looking at things from afar, let's talk about the other things in your portfolio.
Sure.
So you touched on real estate. We touched on Footh Auto and Sales, or Footh Auto and Service. Then what about any other businesses that you're involved with?
Well, another business that I was able to start was called a reinsurance company. So Footh Reinsurance, that was basically reinsurance is your products that you sell at your dealership. So that's your extended warranties, your GAP, which covers any negative equity if you total the car.
If it's finance, right?
If it's finance, right? So had that company, I actually just unwound that, just stopped doing that. And the reason is because, the company that came to me, really good friend of mine started, he said, you sell good cars, they don't break. This is gonna really do really, really well. The money grew. Well, as we know, the automotive industry is a lot of people overpaid during COVID. So I looked at the trajectory of losses. People are keeping their cars longer. People are stepping down their budget. Oh, I bought this $80,000 truck. I want something for 30 grand. Well, so the vehicles are getting higher mileage. Your losses on that reinsurance is always what people keep their vehicles. So I recognized that account and I could kind of see the performance start to table. And now I start to see it go down. I pulled the plug. I'm not stocking 200 cars and selling 90 a month anymore. My mentality has shifted. As I diversified into other industries, when I started buying rentals, I was like, okay, I started amassing crews. Got into construction. So I had an exteriors business doing exteriors construction. Now we're getting into something completely wild. So I started this brand, Ben Buys. The idea was, and it started actually with a customer, hey, Ben Buys, buying cars off the street. And I'm like, well, hey, I can apply this to real estate. So we're making more moves in real estate. That's going to be coming up. I'm going to be targeting. Truthfully, there's a lot of the holes in the boat. I always want to find the holes in the boat in every industry. The holes in the boat in purchasing residential real estate, in my opinion, is a lack of transparency. I think there's a lot of baby boomers that are cycling, that are moving on to a different stage of their life. They're selling their properties. And I think there's a lot of people out there offering ridiculous amounts of money, ridiculously low amounts of money. And I see a hole in the boat. The hole in the boat, and what Ben Buys is going to be bringing to the table is a free evaluation, a retail evaluation of that home. And then here's what I'll buy it for cash. My profit to gain is really in the rehabbing of the home, right? And I've already recognized that as I'm picking up the crumbs of some of these bigger people out there that are already doing this, I'm picking up the crumbs and doing very, very well. But what I'm recognizing is I'm coming 10 to 15% higher, still in an equitable position, but that's their whole game. There's a lot of people out there that are really taking advantage of that market. And I know as I push more into that and bring more of that approach when I started in the automotive industry, which was transparency in people. And if I apply that, which I have, to residential real estate, I see the most opportunity there. So we're going to be focusing a lot more time, resources, and marketing towards that angle. Construction is going to continue. At what level? I don't know. You talked about partnerships. I had a split in the company. So door opened up. Just had a Minnesota Treehouse Masters. They're building me a treehouse up north. It looks like there's going to be opportunities to franchise with them and have some opportunities to get into construction more up north by my cabin. Again, one of those things where I'm having faith in God to just open those doors and close those doors. And sometimes, the encouragement I'll give anybody watching this is sometimes the door will close and it closes because someone's looking out for you, right? And it's hard to do. It's hard to do. I tell people all the time, I've had some really successful failures. I had one company I'll talk about, Genesis Industries, okay? Fabrication, manufacturing, partnered up with a good buddy of mine, Joe. We had some early success. Came time to scale the company. Joe is a grinder, a hard worker. Company was 50 miles away. So I had very little to do. It was one of those businesses where it was making money. We were doing well. We were doing work for Red Bull, Big Lots. Hy-Vee. We were getting some momentum, but I wasn't in the business, right? And reflecting back on that, there was some success there, back against the wall. And it was one of those companies that I still to this day think would have been the most successful company I owned. But I wasn't engaged enough in the day-to-day operations of it. It was by all means a successful failure. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself, how I operated. Joe said to me, I think you're seeing this more as an investor. First I was hurt, and I was like, this dude's right. He quit his job to help start this company. He was putting in the sweat equity. I was backing it with the money. And by all means, what an opportunity I missed out on. But it gave me an option. It gave me the opportunity to really get that 10-mile view and go, okay, why did I not blow up, right? Because I had this perception and the reality was different. The reality was there is nothing, and I hear this all the time, how do you create passive income? And well, I'm going to invest in that. And I'll tell you all right now, unless you're willing to put your heart into it 100%, the odds of success are and even if you put your heart into it 100%, your back is going to be against the wall. Very, very, very seldom in life can you strike rich on the first thing. It's the ability to deal with adversity and how you respond to it. But if your core value is coming back to my faith, God opens doors, closes doors. And even after that Genesis mistake, I made some mistakes with the exteriors business that I'll never make again, right? And that 10-mile view and that approach is really, really, really important because it makes you evaluate the purpose, your purpose, right? And so many times people get way too sucked into the opportunity without realizing how much time and effort has to go into it for it to succeed.
Well, and with social media and this culture, this society that we're in now, everything online makes business look like all you got to do is start something or be a part of something, whether it's financially or maybe it's from a mentorship perspective. And then all of a sudden it's just going to turn to gold. I'm going to go get licensed for X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden things are just going to come.
Right.
It's just going to pop off. Not realizing all the stuff that doesn't make it to the camera.
Right.
Which is all the grit, all the blood, sweat, and tears, the hats you got to wear.
Yeah.
If it's with employees, you have, it's like a whole nother family.
Yeah.
And you're going, especially if you're a family man, then you're coming home, you have your actual family, and then you have your business and your entire team, staff, and all that.
Yep.
So it's really interesting seeing so many, especially I would say 35 and younger, are just blown away that they have to actually sit down, get on the saddle, and apply themselves. 100%. Like, dude, you got to be all in. Right. You got to be fully into this thing. Right. You'll get to a point where you can delegate it.
Right.
But you got to get into it first.
Right.
You got to understand your business before you can delegate parts of your business.
100%.
Or you just don't understand it.
100%.
And that to me is a pretty scary thing. I would never want to be in a position where, like with this podcast journey, I'm doing the film, I'm getting the interviews, I'm editing, I'm putting it all together. I'm starting up the pages. And it's because I've already been through that infancy stage before and I understand how you plow the field to get the fruit, to get the harvest. It's come, it's second nature for me, but it's fun going back to that beginning stage because it's like, man, I remember this when I had no clue what was going to happen. And it's like, when you've already seen your crop grow and produce fruit before, it's more encouraging. But kind of back to what I was saying just a minute ago is for people that haven't seen it and all they've seen is the social media posts, because that's what, in the last, when we graduated high school, I'd be 04. What were you?
02.
02. Yep. So, in that time, we didn't even have Facebook. I mean, we knew it was out.
Like
I think
MySpace.
MySpace was the thing. You had your little theme song and stuff. I remember some chick came up to me and she's like, "You got Facebook?" And I'm like, "Facebook? What's that?" She's like, "Oh, then you don't have it." Like, that sounds stupid. What kind of Facebook? So I get on Facebook and I look at it and you don't even get a theme song. You don't even get a picture in the background. I was like, man, this is cheesy. But then it blows up. And now all of a sudden, all of the content, content creation is huge. And all these people are out here and they're posting this stuff. But the problem for the younger generation, the things that they don't see is all the hard work, blood, sweat, and tears that goes in behind the scenes to make something what it is.
Right.
And they think, man, instant gratification.
Right.
And that's one thing I can really see in today's society is that the expectation of instant gratification is like rot for somebody.
Absolutely. And I'll say this, the encouraging part of it is, if you're younger and you're watching this, there's so much opportunity. The opportunity, because so few people are willing to put in the time.
That's a really good point.
In the tears, the opportunities there. I just went to a dealer group meeting, and now the bank's flying me down to Missouri in 3 weeks to talk to more dealers. I met this young guy at this dealer group meeting, and afterwards, I'm talking to him. He stocks 55 cars. He's not far from here. He sells 50 a month. He's flipping his inventory. Reminded me of me when I first started. He's so dialed in. He's doing it all, and I was like, this kid's gonna make it, right? And so we're meeting up because he's like, hey, how did you do it? And we're talking about diversification. Like, he's got a good head on. So we're in this meeting. He's got his laptop out. He's working finance sales in this meeting. It like gives me goosebumps because like that was fun for me, right? And he has the same thing. Afterwards, I'm like, hey, it's social hour. You want to grab a beer? He's like, nope, don't want the distraction. I don't drink. It's like 24 years old. You know what I mean? I'm like,
that's solid.
If you have that mentality, that bulldog mentality, you will do well. Now, I dive deeper and I'm like, well, bring your dad along. I want to meet his dad, right? Like, I want to know like what went into this mentality. Because one of my other biggest fears is creating entitlement. One of my biggest pet peeves is entitlement on any level. Whether you're a friend of mine or a relative or an employee, or like, I cannot stand entitlement.
Sounds like you've had an experience.
Yeah, well, when you grow up in an area that's bordered by so much success, you think you see entitlement, right? But really, it's sometimes in your own house. You don't even recognize it. Maybe you're entitling people around you. You don't recognize it. So my fear of making sure my kids are entitled is very, very real, because I want them to value people, time, relationships, right? And you're not entitled to success, right? Like, you may see Facebook, people see the Ben buys thing. Someone made a comment to be like, hey, you're flexing online. I'm building a brand. To be perfectly clear, I would love to, like in a beautiful world, I want to disconnect up north and hunt, but like, I'm building a brand. Make no mistake about it. Yeah, I appreciate the things that I have. I'm building a brand and creating momentum. That Ben buys video with the Lamborghini got me a house bought because the granddaughter saw, oh, Ben buys homes. Now I'm getting a call and doing an evaluation, buying that home, and just creating that snowball of success. The question is, are you going to use those tools for actual success, or is it a flex? Sometimes people have different motives, right? So,
sure.
And sometimes the perception of those motives are different. People might take a look at me, have no idea the cloth I was cut from, and they see the Ben buys on Instagram and they're like, oh, look at this guy. This is all he's into. You know what I mean? I don't put a lot of personal things on there for a reason. So, most definitely.
What do you think through this journey of this conversation, just looking at where you started, your background, upbringing, through high school, mentorship, meeting your wife, growing a family, growing a business, multiple businesses, mentoring other people along the way. Have you looked at or thought about your exit strategy?
It's funny. Exit strategy. It's I don't know what retirement looks like for me, because I'm so used to the grind. I'm so used to like building things that I have it in my mind of like what I want it to look like. But we just went on spring break and came in, and like by day 8, I'm like, I got to get home. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, really hard.
You'd be lucky if you were 8 hours in doing this.
Oh my gosh. Well, it normally takes me 3 days to calm down. And then it's like, then I get relaxed and I'm like, okay. That's why I love our place up north. I get to work from home, disconnect a little bit, so in my mind, man, I don't know that I necessarily have an exit strategy. I think my biggest thing is just not to get too attached to the money and the things. And will there be a day where I pull that plug? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to build my rental portfolio so big so that it won't matter. So, I'm always kind of in it, always kind of doing something. And I think my exit strategy is real estate. I really do. I think that the way, and it's hard. Like, we could shut the camera down right now. Where do you want to go? Right? Like, dude, we're living it, right? Like, I'm living. People say, like, what's retirement for people, right? Like, I feel blessed to have had the doors open and carve my path that I get to go where I want, when I want, how I want. But the real question for me is like, in a perfect world, man, be a grandparent, travel around, visit my kids, fish up north. Hey, let's go away on a beach for a couple of weeks, right? And I think part of that exit strategy is how do I put myself in a position to create that buzzword of passive income, right? But real estate, man, real estate for me, one thing that I've learned with talking to a lot of successful people is you know, the cars aren't appreciating. The majority of them are not appreciating, right? So, you know, I'm in a different mode right now, you know, playing into our market today. The world's afraid, just like during COVID, just like during 08, 09, 2010. What's your mindset? Is your mindset fear, which is a product of your conditioning, or is your mindset opportunity? How are you going to shift your mindset to be able to adhere to whatever the market's done this, dude? Look at the cycles. It's always done it, right? The question is, are you ready for what's coming, no matter what it is, right? So I'm in a different mode right now. I'm selling some cars, stacking some more cash, getting ready to make some more moves. As soon as I'm done here, I'm going to look at another rental. You know, I'm sticking and moving, but I'm getting ready. I'm piling cash. And I think when you take a look at, again, I'm no mental giant. What's Berkshire Hathaway doing? What's BlackRock doing? What's the big money doing right now? They're getting ready for an adjustment. Adjustments are going to come. There's going to be another one in 10 years. So I'm trying to detach, and whether that's part of my exit strategy, I don't know. I guess I'll see where I'm at. But, you know, KFC started back by the Colonel when he was 60. So, you know.
It's pretty amazing when you get to hear those stories.
It is.
And that is the cool thing. I will say, you know, you brought up the positive side of social media, and the potential there. And that is one of the things is the things that you take in online. Part of it's observation and people just sharing. But you're right. There's a lot of good potential. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and it is a mindset thing.
It is. And I think, you know, what scares me to death is the environment I grew up in is very different than where we're at today. What environment are our children going to grow up in? This is something that plagues me. And I've had people talking about politics. I've gotten into some political arenas. Most recently went to DC, had an opportunity to go out there to talk about this new Privacy Rights Act that actually, if you have employees under 100, like you can't advertise using any digital advertising, Google ads, Facebook. Now that got curbed, thankfully, but had the opportunity to go to DC, meet with some lawmakers about that. That is the one thing. You can make all the money in the world, but if we don't take a look at what our future looks like for our children, that's a really, 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 really scary thing. Might be a future for me down the road, trying to focus more on that, trying to focus more on policy, maybe not necessarily politics, but getting more involved in that arena so that I can fight the battle now so my children don't have to fight the battle when they're in their 30s and 40s. I mean, it's anybody who's paying attention with their eyes open knows what direction our country's headed with inflation. You know, so that for me, you talk about exit strategy, it's always been something that's intrigued me, is getting more into the weeds politically and figuring out, okay, how do we get back on track? And I think it comes back to our local communities. I think it comes back to reinvesting. If you own a business and you're watching this, stop giving to these big conglomerates. If you want to, you can, but dude, keep your money local. Keep your money with the community, with the kids. Figure out how we can reshape and reform the opportunities that are amongst the people next to you. You know, I've seen successful people, successful families. One thing I really recognize is they bring each other up, right? I've tried that. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't work out. But I think the more we can lift each other up, I've seen this, you know, talk about baby showers. What about a business shower? Right? Like, what about like we get together and like there's some young guys we've met on Rally that want to know, okay, what's your passion? Interview people, bring other people up in life rather than figure out how I can keep it all, because I got news for you. Think you're going to keep it all. Look at inflation. Look at the cost of properties. There's a reason why all these big companies are buying rentals. You know, I'm talking to Cayman, I'm talking to investors in Cayman and real estate developers in Cayman, and it's interesting. Everybody's making the same move. Real estate, residential real estate. So naturally, my gut instinct, real estate.
I really like your idea about the business shower.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I'd be down for it, man. Get together a group of guys, gals, and, you know, pull some money together and, you know, with some sort of a payback, you know, free.
Sure.
You know, I think it'd be cool.
But I mean, you'd have a resource to tap into. You'd have the mentorship that would be available.
Yep.
Kind of pull it together.
Yep, exactly. And not targeting the entrepreneurs, targeting the people that actually have a passion.
Yeah.
Come to me with a great idea that's within your arena of experience, right? Come to me with sorry, epic raps, but coming to the rap shop, something like that. Hey, I worked here for years, or I worked in this industry for years, and we're looking, I can do this. I know I can do this. Let's pull some money and let's mentor some of the younger people. I think there'd be some good opportunity there.
When you bring up younger people, makes me think about our kids. So your oldest is 17. My oldest is turning 13 here in a few weeks. And yeah, I look at the side of, man, what are they going to grow up in with? I mean, it's just such a different. I told my wife, this is not the America we grew up in.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Right.
At the same time, you're looking more optimistic with social media and what potential is there. I'm thinking optimistically for just the culture and the work environment, with employees being and serving, or even businesses. I mean, you go through a drive-through and I think 9 times out of 10, they're shoving their hand with a bag of food out the window.
Yep.
And you might as well just have a bot at that point. A bot would be even better.
Right.
Because you wouldn't have the attitude of, I hate my job, I hate my life, and then a door shut. I mean, at least maybe you get to have a good day or something.
Absolutely.
And I just thinking about the morals and the values being instilled in our children. We homeschool our kids for the same reason, just a different approach to it.
Yeah.
And we want our morals and our values, our Christian morals and values, Christ-centered ones, to be instilled in them throughout their upbringing. And I just think of, what it's going to be like for employers or entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs coming up. What is this society going to look like in 17? So, 7 years, 8 years, 25 years old, people starting a business, and what kind of mentality they have. I mean, I can only imagine so many companies are just going to be struggling.
Right. I think, I know this. Parenting and mentorship are so incredibly huge. I mentioned that guy, Eric DeLacy, what role he played. He sat me down when I was like 19. He said, you're making good money. Keep doing what you're doing. You're going to be broke. Thought about it. And he referenced my upbringing. And I was really angry. Like, how dare you mention how I was raised, and then I went to go work for him.
Mentorship challenges.
Big time. I went to go work for him. Was doing well. He said it again, but this time it was different because it sank. And I was like, this dude's right. I've made all this money and I have nothing to show for it. So I'm driving home, 20.
Okay.
1920. It was about 1 year into, so it would have been 2005-ish, right around there. And 2006. And it sank. I'll never forget, I was driving down 5th Avenue in South St. Paul, and it dawned on me that I was a product of my environment. It dawned on me that my parents worked tons of overtime. We always beautiful home, nice things. But I was like, okay, I'm doing the exact same thing. Where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? He wasn't trying to offend me. He was trying to look out for me. He's like, dude, if you want to own a business sometime, this is the path. I went home. We had tons of credit card debt. Made good money, still tons of debt. Went home. My wife fell asleep. I grabbed all of her cards, grabbed my all cards, started cutting them up, put them on the table. Said, woke up next day, we're done with this. We're changing right now. Refinanced a couple cars, paid off our second mortgage, took the second mortgage out, paid off our credit card debt, shuffled some things around. Our life was unrecognizable 18 months later. Discipline through mentorship, right? You mentioned, so that parenting, I'll use the example, Chick-fil-A in West St. Paul, one of the most successful Chick-fil-A's. Owner's name was Charlie. Flew up here, buying to this Chick-fil-A, one of the top performing Chick-fil-A's in the country, okay? Made the decision to send his kids to the same school as our kids. So I ended up talking to him a little bit. He would be awarded free vehicles every year. He was giving to employees, giving free vehicles to employees because he kept getting all these awards. He said, the reason why I picked this school on top of the values is because I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for all of the kids from St. Croix that worked at Chick-fil-A because they were showing up on time. They know how to be respectful. They know how to communicate. He goes, Ben, it was clear as day. The behavior of these children versus these children. So I was like, I have to look into this school district or this school system, these private schools, because clearly The parents are doing something different. And I think until we get back to the parents need to stop treating their kids like they're friends. I've seen it. I coach in these inner city programs. If you're as committed, I mean, it's amazing to me. You want to talk about money, don't even get me going on youth sports. These parents that live through their children and create this environment that tell their kids are the best kids and best in every sport. Dude, until parents stop being entitled and start holding their kids accountable and recognizing that, like, some of the best things my dad did for me was take his belt off and put me in my place as a kid. Discipline. He didn't hit me hard, but it was the point. We had discipline, right? Until we get back to parenting and those simple principles, we're not going to see much change. But now the flip side of it is, raise your kids right. How much opportunity is going to exist for them if we keep that mindset and we instill that mindset of discipline and respect and hard work and taking care of people. But until those things change, I don't know. But I always go back to, our grandparents probably said the same thing about our country, right? Look at it. Well, where is our country headed? They weren't wrong. I mean, we're unrecognizable compared to where we were 100 years ago, for sure.
One of the things that one of my mentors told me years ago when we first started popping out kids, he said, Adam, if you want your kids to grow up and achieve the things that they want to achieve, not what I want to achieve, but that they want to achieve, and you want them to stay on, call it the straight and narrow, don't be a hypocrite. Your kids aren't going to, for love, for example, between you and your wife, isn't going to be perceived by what you tell them it is. It's going to be perceived by what you show them it is. They're going to look at what we do as their parents. And that's what's going to determine their truth. That's going to be their reality. It goes such a long way.
It does. Don't watch what they say, watch what they do. And the kids are watching constantly.
And that's their definition.
Right. So what's your 10-mile view of your behavior or my behavior? I do that constantly, right? I'm a wild personality compared to my wife, right? Like, I always, again, sometimes you overthink it, right? Like, the decisions you make, it molds your children 100%. And being intentional is so incredibly important. I agree.
Well, it's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.